initially it was just my own curiosity. I wanted to see whether anybody had written anything about Indonesian fashion. And I was flabbergasted really when I realized that there was nothing, because people have so many misconceptions about non-Western fashion, and in the case of Indonesia they just don't understand anything that comes out of Indonesia in terms of fashion. So I will write the book, and they are under the impression that people in Indonesia only wear sarongs or traditional dress, and also admiring the creativity of the people that are involved, the creativity of the designers to begin with.
Since the late 1960s until now, modern Indonesian fashion is blooming following development and references from international movies and music during the period. With its long history, it is too bad the Indonesian fashion did not have any enough references to look and to reflect at the moment. Today, on this very first episode of JFW Converfashion, I will have a conversation with a very special person. A couple of years ago, Alessandra Lopez y Royo came here to Jakarta to do some research, participative research about her book in Indonesian fashion. So she wrote the book called that Indonesian Fashion Through the Looking Glass, and recently she has also edited a book about Gaya Panggabean, published by Rizzoli New York. And Alessandra is also a lecturer for SOAS London, University of London, and soon she's gonna be with us. Hi Alex, how are you doing?
Well, thank you. Hello, and first of all, I'd like to say that I'm absolutely delighted to have been invited to be part of this conversation for Jakarta Fashion Week. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about something I really feel very passionate about, and that is Indonesian fashion, particularly contemporary Indonesian fashion. So this is the book, and I'd like to show it. It's Contemporary Indonesian Fashion Through the Looking Glass. And the title is quite important. It's Through the Looking Glass, because I look at Indonesian fashion as a case study, and Indonesian fashion really provides a kind of mirror of what is happening in fashion globally. The book is part of the dress and fashion research, which is run by Bloomsbury. It is an academic book, to be used as a textbook, but at the same time, I tried to write it in a very accessible way, because I want people, the general public, general readers everywhere, to pick it up and sort of start reading it, to just have an overview, an introduction to Indonesian fashion today. I think this is very important because, unfortunately, there are no resources. There's been very little that has been written about Indonesian fashion. There are virtually no books. And I thought that this was a huge gap, and this was the reason why I decided to write this book.
I remember I saw you in Jakarta Fashion Week a couple of years ago, and you talk with a lot of people. And when is the last time you come to Jakarta?
Okay, when I started my research, I came to Indonesia in 2015, the autumn 2015. I was very fortunate to receive a fellowship that allowed me to be in residence at the École Française d'Extrême-Orient. There's a branch of it in Jakarta, and that was my base. And so during that time, and I'm really grateful for this to Sfida Ali Shabana, I was able to attend Jakarta Fashion Week it was an immersion in Indonesian fashion. I was there every day from morning to night. And the only thing I didn't do was sleep in the tent. I was there from very early morning till late at night because I really wanted to see everything, and I had the opportunity to meet lots of people. Following that, of course, after I returned to London in December 2015, but I continued my research online through my contacts, etc. And then I went back to Indonesia again. And the last time I was in Indonesia was in 2018, where I was trying to tie up a few loose ends. On that occasion, I attended Indonesia Fashion Week, the other major fashion event in the Indonesian fashion calendar, and also other events. And I tied up a few loose ends. And then after that, once I returned, I started writing. So my research really stops in 2018. And since then, I have to say a lot of things have changed, particularly in the past year, when there's been, I mean, there was already globally a push towards digital presentations, online presentations, but because of the pandemic, this has now become the mode. I mean, Fashion Week has been transformed completely, and everywhere in the world, most presentations are done online.
I should admit that your book is filling the gap that we don't have right now. I mean, like fashion history or Indonesian fashion, specifically literature. We don't have a lot of about that. A lot of them is more, I could say, is subjective. It's quite biased, and another one is more like profiling, coffee table book. And your book is like in between that, as you said, that it is a research book. So, and for me, it is giving a really a glimpse of situation about Indonesian fashion at that time. So, could you tell me the process behind your research doing that? I mean, you do a lot here. You do participative research. You involve on the process a lot with a lot of people here.
Yes, I did. I mean, I really had to, I mean, I explain all this in the book as well. My connection with Indonesia goes back to the end of the 80s, because I did my PhD on the art and archaeology of Indonesia. I studied the Javanese temples. And because of that, of course, I traveled to Indonesia quite frequently to do my research. And I familiarized myself with the Indonesian culture. I became rather familiar with Indonesian culture, and then later, when I became involved in sort of writing and researching the performing arts, which is another great passion of mine, again I came back to Indonesia quite a few times. But of course, arriving in the country, being in the country, it's not that I was blind to everything else. I mean, I would certainly pursue my research at the time, but I was aware of what was happening, and certainly I became aware of the existence of Indonesian fashion. When I then, I had a bit of a career change, and I started, I mean, I taught for many years, then I decided to go freelance, and simultaneously, quite accidentally, I started a new career as a model, and we can talk about that a bit more later, because for me, my modeling is actually fashion activism, in the sense that I am a mature woman, so I'm there to represent older consumers. But at the same time, I was also writing about fashion, and I was very interested in the fashion that came out of non-Western countries. You know, people, I mean, there's lots of very, very good books, interesting books about the fashion that is basically made in London, New York, Paris, Milan. But although there is an awareness that fashion is global, there isn't really that much about fashion that comes out of non-Western countries, with the exception perhaps of Japan, because there's been quite an intense interaction with Japan over the years. And many Japanese designers have actually made a name for themselves moving to the West. An example is Kenzo. So I started looking around to see whether anybody had written anything. I mean, initially it was just my own curiosity. I wanted to see whether anybody had written anything about Indonesian fashion. And I was flabbergasted really when I realized that there was nothing, certainly not in English. And so I thought, well, it's time to write about it, because people have so many misconceptions about non-Western fashion. And in the case of Indonesia, they just don't understand anything that comes out of Indonesia in terms of fashion. So I will write the book. And that was a very bold decision because I had then to I had to make certain choices. My book was meant to be an analysis, and therefore I wanted my book to be used for fashion courses. But at the same time, I also wanted the general public, general readers, to pick it up and get to know about Indonesian fashion. So I had to present an overview of the fashion industry in Indonesia. So looking at the way fashion is presented, looking at the way fashion is consumed, and then looking at the different issues that pertain to fashion in Indonesia, and which reflect to a great extent issues which are global, that pertain to fashion globally, because Indonesian fashion is not to be seen, and it's certainly not in isolation. I mean, it is in dialogue with fashion as it happens elsewhere. It's just, if you like, you can say it's a kind of one-way conversation, because people in Indonesia are very aware of what is happening in fashion globally and elsewhere. But there is an imbalance there, because people outside Indonesia are not aware of what is happening in fashion in Indonesia. So that balance needs to be redressed. Yeah.
I'm just wondering what kind of misconception that the outside world know about the Indonesian fashion. I mean, there is a lot of misconception, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, for example, they may be very familiar with Indonesian textiles, and they are under the impression that people in Indonesia only wear sarongs or traditional dress, or that the fashion that is in Indonesia is entirely imported and it's all Western made. Or they might, because there's been greater visibility of it in recent years, they might think that Indonesian fashion is all about modest wear, which of course is a very important strand of Indonesian fashion, but I wouldn't regard it as representative of Indonesian fashion altogether, of Indonesian fashion, because there are many women in Indonesia who have chosen not to embrace modest wear. So in fact, within Indonesian fashion, there is such a diversity in terms of offerings, and there's such creativity that I think that really there should be a greater effort also on behalf of the people in power to sort of provide an infrastructure so that Indonesian fashion can be exported and can be seen outside Indonesia on a par with the fashion that is made in the usual centers. And actually it's not even made there anymore, because as you know, a lot of many of the clothes are actually made in other countries, say in Portugal or in Morocco, or at some point also they were made in Indonesia, although they had a Western label.
With your experience, I'm just wondering, do you think Indonesian fashion is more ethnic fashion than modern or contemporary fashion?
No, I wouldn't call it ethnic at all. I mean, I don't like this word ethnic, because you can say that Western fashion is also ethnic to some extent. But no, I don't think that Indonesian fashion is only for Indonesians. Definitely not. I mean, although I have to say that I have spoken with people in Indonesia who were very pragmatic and thought that really Indonesian fashion, from the point of view of consuming Indonesian fashion, there is such a huge market within Indonesia. So it's not really such a priority to export Indonesian fashion, considering all the problems that are involved. But I think that that is somehow, it's not the right thing to say or to do. I think that Indonesian fashion really needs to be known internationally and consumed internationally. I don't know how that can be done. It's not for me to provide, a remedy. I can simply, I've written about this in my book. I am an observer. I'm very much aware of the fact that I am a foreigner. And I came to Indonesia to look at at the workings of the Indonesian fashion industry. And I did so with respect for what people are doing and with curiosity, I felt at times like Alice in Wonderland, I have to say, but yes, with curiosity, with an intellectual curiosity, and also admiring the creativity of the people that are involved, the creativity of the designers to begin with.
Okay, so during your participative research for the book, I also noticed that you also doing some modeling jobs here in Indonesia at that time. You shoot with for some designers, and what is the experience that you have from that?
Okay, that was a very interesting experience. Let me say at the outset that I didn't work as a model in Indonesia. That's very important because I had a research visa. So whatever modeling I did, it was not for money. It was simply for the experience, and I saw it as a way to become more involved and sort of help me with my research. So I was invited. I mean, it just happened. It's not something that I had planned, but I was asked whether I would like to participate in a fashion show and then some photo shoots. And I thought that that was an amazing experience because I could really see how people work in that particular context. And it gave me an opportunity to meet, models and photographers, to talk to them. And therefore to add more material. It was all part of my research, and then I found some way of putting it in my book.
Okay, I mean I remember your photograph for Trihandoko, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yes, I
you
got
also
on.
you also work for him, I guess.
I did. He invited me to take part in his IPME show, which was
Show, yeah.
in December 2015. Again, that was a great experience. I also did some modeling for GEA. It was actually not part of any fashion week. It was a private fashion show, but I was very I was thrilled to be part of it because, again, it gave me an opportunity to, meet more people and really look around and see how things, work and how they fall together. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. During your time in Indonesia, you attend a lot of fashion show. Do you have any fashion show that really intrigue you? I mean, that really fascinate you to do your research?
Well, I must say that I liked all the fashion shows that I attended. I mean, apart from the main ones, Jakarta Fashion Week and Indonesia Fashion Week, which are quite different, but they are positioned as the main, or they were positioned as the main fashion shows in the Indonesian fashion calendar. There was also the IPME show, which was very interesting in itself. And then there were other fashion shows that were held in malls like malls and also installations. I was very interested in looking at these were smaller events, but the fashion installations. I think that one thing is certain, that in Indonesia there are loads of fashion shows. People love fashion shows in Indonesia. They are really seen as performances. They are embraced as performances, and they are not just the usual runway walk. There's also a lot of other things that are involved. I mean, you have actual performers, sometimes you have poetry readings, you have different artists getting involved in the fashion show. And I think that this is also reflective of a general tendency within Indonesia to sort of be to celebrate and to involve performance in a celebration. As indeed it is also in the West. I mean, think of the shows of, say, Alexander McQueen. But in Indonesia, this is really interpreted perhaps much more broadly. And, Indonesians really love the fashion show as performance.
Exactly. That's missing on this digital era. I mean, when we should do it digitally, yeah, it's something that we're gonna miss a lot about that performance. I mean, the
We
vibe is
are going
different.
Absolutely, we are going to miss it, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to develop the fashion film as a genre. So we will see, in fact, a lot. I'm pretty sure we will see a lot of very interesting offerings. Fashion films will be the main way to present fashion, because you can't have a kind of typical runway show on a film. It gets boring. So you need to have something else. You need to have a narrative. You need to have a fashion film. And this is not going to happen just in Indonesia. This is happening everywhere.
Yeah.
The next London Fashion Week is going to be entirely digital. There's not going to be live presentations, very, very few, in fact. And most designers have already been invited to work on fashion films to submit to the British Fashion Council. So this is something that is happening globally, and so we will see a lot more of it.
Okay. Okay. In a way, do you see some connections between Indonesian traditional craftsmanship to Indonesian contemporary fashion? Do you see any red line about that?
Absolutely. I mean, Indonesian fashion has kind of left behind. I mean, although there is still that involvement in fast fashion, that's particularly. This is something that again it is experienced globally. The pandemic has allowed people to step back, and people have started thinking more seriously than ever about sustainability. And this is one of the things that actually is quite important within Indonesian fashion, because many designers do rely on, they do make sustainable fashion, they do rely on the workmanship of, local textile producers, and sort of using in a very innovative way what is part of the tradition, if you like, of Indonesian textiles. And this is something that can be developed even further. So I certainly do see, that as a major area as far as Indonesian fashion is concerned.
Okay. As ecosystem, you see a lot of Indonesian fashion, as you mentioned before, like from the couture, something like couture, and also ready to wear, and also fashion that inspired by traditional fabric, and also modest fashion, and also the contemporary one. From all of those categories, which one that really attract you and fascinate you on Indonesian fashion?
Well, they're all facets of contemporary Indonesian fashion, and really, I like them all. I love them all. I mean, like I said earlier, I often felt a bit like Alice in Wonderland while doing my research. I mean, it was amazing to see the creativity of designers. They're all wonderful. They're all very knowledgeable. They all have an interesting way of presenting their creations. And yeah, there's a lot for everyone. I mean, it is one of my main, I mean, I was always asking this question, and I sounded like, a plaintive little girl. I sounded like a whining little girl saying, "Oh, why can we not see this fashion outside Indonesia?" And people were saying, "Well, it's not up to us. It's just that we need to develop the right infrastructure." Because I see that. Although, of course, there are individual designers that do already have a market outside Indonesia, but that's in terms of individual achievement. I really would like to see Indonesian fashion being presented in all its diversity and complexity. And so I'd like to be able to go, say, to a department store here, a good department store like Harrods or Selfridges, and I would like to be able to buy a creation, something that has been made in Indonesia that is not fast fashion, but is made by the amazing creatives that you do find in Indonesia.
Okay. Okay, I'm really glad to hear that. And so you already talk with a lot of people here, and with more than hundreds of interview, I guess, with fashion stakeholder here in Indonesia. What kind of vision do you see from them right now?
I see a lot of commitment. People are really committed to what they do. They're genuine. They are enthusiastic. I also see that people do feel that they don't get the right kind of appreciation. They're not, especially young designers, they're not really supported. I mean, there have been initiatives, certainly, and we should acknowledge those. But overall, a lot more could be done. And like I said, it's not just, I mean, I don't have a solution. It's also a political issue, and it's something that needs to be sorted.
Okay. Okay. So what kind of obstacle that you saw back then as a researcher here to see the landscape here on Indonesian fashion?
Well, the lack of infrastructure, basically. I mean, this is something that everybody has told me about, and it's something that I saw, the lack of infrastructure. It's very difficult to, export. I mean, to send, for example, goods overseas. There's so many hurdles there, and it makes it very difficult especially for young upcoming designers to engage with that.
Okay. Okay. On your book, you put work from Agus Susastro as the cover. Do you have any explanation about that? Why you choose those looks?
Okay,
Those
absolutely, I need to explain that. I mean, my book is for an international readership. It's not just addressed to Indonesians. So it's important that some terms of reference should also be recognized and be familiar to readers that know very little about Indonesia. Now, in my book, I talk about a phenomenon that is known as mimesis. That is when you kind of rework something. It was a very postmodern thing, actually, to sort of to mimic and to and in so doing, you change it into something else, and it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek. So this image that I chose, which was first published in Harper's Bazaar, I think, and then I got permission to use the image, is very important. because it encapsulates a lot of the issues of my book. The model, Pekita Vijaya, is a mature model, and I do talk about women and mature women in fashion in the book. And it is a take on a very, very famous photograph that went around the world because it was part of an exhibition about the couturier Azzedine Alaya. Azzedine Alaya can be seen in that image with one of his tallest models standing on a pedestal. You can only see the silhouette of the model at the back. And there he is. Azzedine Alaya was very, very small, much smaller than Auguste Susastro. And so there is this contrast in height. And the model has her left hand on his head, and he is in this kind of pose, very jovial, you know, beaming, smiling. And that image is very well known, you know, to anybody who has some knowledge of fashion in the Western world. So this image with Auguste Susastro is a take on that. Of course, it is different, and there are other elements, but it's kind of, it references that image, kind of tongue-in-cheek, if you like. Here you have Pekita Vijaya on a pedestal, and she's wearing one of Susastro's creations, very sleek, very elegant. And Susastro himself, he's barefooted and wearing traditional Javanese dress. I mean, he's wearing a sarong, but his head is not covered. And so normally, you know, the head would be covered, but in his case, the head is not covered. And he, you can see his shaven head. So again, you know, that's a very contemporary modern element, if you like. And so it's very telling in many ways. You know, they say images can speak, a picture can speak 1,000 words, or is the equivalent of 1,000 words, in the sense that by looking at this image, you can already get a sense of what the book is about. It's very intriguing, even if you are not able to unpack it fully the way I have done. It's something that, you know, because it's an image, it will kind of bring back memories of other images, and I think it's intriguing. It will invite you to look at the book and the content of the book. And that's it. That's the reason why I chose that image for the front cover. For the back to be kind of consistent, I also went with another one of Auguste Susastro's creation. But here you can see a model whose ethnicity is, and I'm just showing the back, whose ethnicity is ambiguous, because the model has kind of dark blonde hair, but you can't actually see her face. And, you know, it could be anyone really that has colored the hair dark blonde. Certainly many Indonesian women do that. And I did like it because of its ambiguity.
Okay.
And that's why I put it there.
Okay, so you have also a part of your book also talk about representative in Indonesian fashion. I mean, like, could you tell us about that?
Sorry, could you rephrase your question? I didn't quite catch it.
A part of your book also talk about woman representation on the fashion. What kind of image that they convey on the fashion magazine and everything. Could you explain about that?
Yes, of course, it's very important. And this also connects to my own fashion activism. I mean, clearly, I've written the book from my own standpoint. There was no other way of writing it. And I brought this in because this is very important to me. Fashion, representation in fashion matters. I mean, we are seeing worldwide an interest or a tendency to make fashion inclusive. So we are seeing more older models. We are also seeing more disabled models, because fashion is for everyone. And this is something that is also happening to some extent in Indonesia. The models that are presenting the fashion are changing. There is a push towards greater inclusivity. Although it's happening very slowly. It's happening very slowly, not just in Indonesia, but elsewhere too. But clearly, the message has been picked up that fashion, that representation in fashion is very important, and that fashion should be inclusive. So I do touch on that in the book. In fact, I more than touch on that in the book. And I also talk about the connection between the fashion industry and the beauty industry and the different issues that this raises.
Okay. You have any future project in the meantime, Alex? I mean, do you plan to write something?
Yes, I would like to write some more. Not necessarily about Indonesia. I think that, it's very important that I should say this. With this book, I really wanted to start a conversation about Indonesian fashion, contemporary Indonesian fashion. I think that there's room now, for an interesting dialogue to develop. There's room for others to jump in and sort of continue the conversation. I feel that at the moment I don't plan to. I don't plan at the moment to write any more about Indonesian fashion. It doesn't mean that I'm not interested in it. I think that I want to leave room for others. But I will continue to write about fashion, because fashion is actually part of my life. I'm fully involved in fashion. So I might sort of look at developments closer home. I'm very interested in a project that is currently taking place in southern Italy, and it's all to do with embroidery, local embroidery, and embroidery as known from North African countries, skills that are brought in by refugee women. So there's an atelier where the refugee women exchange their skills with the local women from this part of southern Italy, the Salento region. And then fashion, and fashion is made out of this, the fabric, the embroidery that they make, collaborating with different fashion designers. It's a very interesting project, and I would like to kind of look at it and kind of unpack it and write about it. But there are other things I might get involved. So yeah, definitely, so watch this space.
Okay. From your perspective, after writing the book and also do a lot of research here, what is the biggest asset that Indonesian fashion people haven't realized yet?
The immense creativity of Indonesian designers. I think that is something that cannot be overstated, because the offerings are amazing. I saw beautiful things, and I think that you should be proud in Indonesia of making this kind of fashion. And I just wish that it could be seen more outside Indonesia.
Great. Yeah, I do hope so. We could see more from our designers right now. Okay, thank you, Alex, for your thought, and I would like to hear more work from you, and also please update me about your upcoming projects. Please kindly inform me if you have any, and you could try to visit Alex on her social media account
Yes.
yeah.
I do have I do have a Twitter account, an Instagram account, and both the handle for both of them is AlexB244. You can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram, so we can already start a conversation through social media. Yes.
Cool. Okay. And if you want to know about Dewi Magazine and Jakarta Fashion Week, you could also visit us on our social media and also application that's shown below. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you.